cut you down. Sooner or later, God'll cut you down.
Welcome back to the Werewolf Movie channel, where we take a fun and light-hearted look at werewolf movies throughout history. This month was such a treat for me, as it gave me an opportunity to re-watch one of my absolute favourites, and I'm so excited to be back to talk to you about it. As always, we will be in spoilers right from the start, so please go and watch this movie before you watch this video, because I guarantee you, if you are here watching something called the Werewolf Movie channel, you're going to enjoy it, I promise. Most of the time in werewolf cinema, it's fair to say that the transformation from man into beast manifests as an occasional explosion of special effects into an otherwise mundane reality. 1994's Wolf, starring Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer and James Spader, asks instead what it would be like to see this transformation happen slowly through performance, story, and the characters' interaction with their world. While the god himself, Rick Baker, hallelujah, is on hand to provide an array of beautiful and often extremely subtle makeup effects, what sells the transformation is altogether more subtle. It's in the nuances of movement, the changes in behaviour or mannerism, shifts in body language, and most of all, reactions to the events happening in the characters' lives. And then ultimately, because you want to see something more exciting happen on screen than a man reclaiming his role in his publishing firm, we do of course get a nice final battle with actual befanged wolf people. But this film's standout appeal is how effectively Nicholson and Spader in particular managed to convey their transformations with only very minimal makeup effects for the majority of the film. And it's those performances that keep me coming back time and time again. Directed by Mike Nichols, who's best known for directing the English language adaptation of The Birdcage, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and The Graduate, Wolf is a romantic horror story of a man discovering the strength to shed a dead life and the price he has to ultimately pay for that rebirth. Aging publisher Will Randall is a man so tame and domesticated he would still be separated from his inner wilderness if you sellotaped a live Wolverine to his forehead. He is an exhausted creature, a burned-out, disillusioned ghost of his younger self, operating entirely in high society bohemian circles. His career is effectively over, and his new boss is about to offer him a choice between, in his own words, no job or a job nobody would want. His younger protege is about to take his role and is already regularly taking his wife, and Will cannot even sum up enough enthusiasm to properly tell him where to stick it. The law of the corporate jungle has overtaken him completely. The world has swallowed Will Randall whole. On his way home from a business trip, he hits a gigantic wolf with his car, but all is not as it seems, and the wolf bites him on the hand before running off. Having rewatched this scene a few times, it's apparent to me that this is effectively an ambush. This is being done intentionally. There is a trap laid, the wolf opens its eyes, makes sure he's coming over, waits, bites him, and then fucks off into the woods and just lets him leave. And you see that the wolf is surrounded by plenty of other wolves. And in fact, when you zoom in on the creature, you see that it looks very, very much like the wolf that Will himself transforms into in his final scene. It feels very orchestrated now that I rewatch it, although on first watching it can appear quite chaotic and spontaneous. Is there some sort of cycle at play here? I think that's what's implied. Was this wolf that bites him once a man himself? I think so. We establish Will's world and his surrounding cast at the publishing house where he works, for the time being at least. This film should win an award for bullseye perfect casting. Even setting aside for the moment how beautifully cast the three main leads are, right? Just the supporting cast alone are all so perfectly done, it's almost funny. What, you need a matronly but worldly secretary character? Boom, Eileen Atkins. Oh, a slightly uptight but dryly funny junior publisher working under Will? Pow! David Hyde Pierce, perfect again. Need a convincing elderly and wealthy millionaire to condescend quietly to everyone? Oh, wallop, Christopher Plummer, how perfect is that? Oh, I'm sorry, was that you? Well, you want a convincingly neglected publisher's wife who's clocked out but wants to protect the marriage she's built but is still quite clearly sexy and like, skadang, Kate Nelligan, give me another. And it's like, oh God, okay, a competent yet lazy New York detective? Bosh, easy, Richard Jenkins, give me another. Oh, shit, okay, a feisty Irish author who's fiercely loyal to Will? Badang, Prunella Scales, give me a hard one. Oh, fucking hell, okay, all right, how about someone that can exist convincingly in the hyper-realistic world of the film while still doing the perfect delivery of an exotic mystical theology character where it's needed, right? 100% grounded and 100% mystical simultaneously. Bitch, I asked for a hard one. Puri. I can't take it. Its casting is too strong. It's just bullseye after bullseye, perfect choice after perfect choice. Casting people don't get enough shout-outs in movie reviews, and I'm sorry to say I didn't Google the casting person, and it won't be getting one in this one. But go and have a look. You know how IMDb works. But just as a bad bit of casting can destroy a good movie, a great bit of casting can turn a good movie into a superb one, and that is definitely the case here. A quick tour of most of these legends leads us to the intro of James Spader's character. Stuart Swinton is Will's protégé and, so we believe at the time, devoted friend. In reality, his character is the epitome of the corporate narcissist. He oozes charm and charisma to conceal the fact that he is a pure and simple Judas, the guy who will have you thinking he's your best friend while quite literally sleeping with your wife and plotting to steal your whole life from under your feet. Spader plays this performance like a guitar solo. Every second he's on screen, he's doing absolutely what's being asked with pitch-perfect delivery. I just find him a joy to watch. I really do. And despite the red herring stuff at the start of the film where we are meant to believe Will's wolf alter ego is killing people, Stuart gives us the opportunity to see the difference between the emergence of the demon wolf in a man who is fundamentally good and that same emergence in a man who is fundamentally not. At this point in the film, Will is already beginning to awaken to a whole new world, and slowly things are starting to change. The first thing that return are his appetites. His hunger for food and sex and earthly pleasures returns stronger than ever. He reconnects with his physical self. Then his sharpened senses begin to kick in. There's a great scene where Will smells alcohol on the breath of a fellow employee at the publishing house. He walks past him early and says, "Oh my God, how can you drink this early?" And the guy says, "How can you tell?" And Will's like, "Are you kidding? I can smell it a mile away." Then before you know it, he's editing a manuscript without needing his reading glasses. Then he's able to pick out individual sounds from all around him, no matter how quiet or far away. Something is very definitely up. But a heightened awareness of the world around you can be a blessing and a curse. And soon Will starts noticing other things as well, such as the scent of his protégé's sweat on his wife's dress. Will discovers his wife Charlotte half naked at Stuart's house and throws her the darkest look possible. Look at that look. When you see that look, this one right here, you fucked up. I just want to say a very quick thank you to everyone who's liking and subscribing. I love reading your comments. All our episodes are now live in audio form on Bandcamp. If you like to have yourself a podcast to listen to while you're at the gym or while you're doing whatever, you can go and grab them from there. Our Patreon is live. All of our episodes, including this one, go live a week early on Patreon. And I'd love to see you there. A big shout out to Anton, of course, our current only patron, for his massive support of the show. We love you, man. Appreciate you. Let's crack on. So suddenly the cat is out of the bag, and Will knows that Stuart has betrayed him on pretty much every level. Things have gone, to coin a werewolf movie channel popular phrase, tits up. In a complete role reversal from his previous inability to confront or condemn his protégé, Will goes straight into the man's office, lets him run his mouth for a full couple of minutes, and then looks him straight in the eye and simply says,
"I'm gonna get you, Stuart."
Which is the most beautifully old school and terrifyingly non-specific threat I've ever heard. Look at his face. Like, you're going to get me? That could mean anything. None of the things it could mean are good. One element that works far better for me than it does in a lot of Hollywood movies is the romance between the Will and Laura characters. When Will runs into Laura, the daughter of his current boss, for the second time in the movie, and they actually get some time together after quite an awkward intro, it's clear that this character is absolutely his equal from the start. But since neither of them are used to meeting an equal, and neither of them are in a particularly great place personally, it's actually far from the harmonious "gee, ain't we both great" experience you might imagine. Far from it. And that actually reflects experiences that I've had in my own life as well. The way they have to sort of fight their way towards any kind of true understanding of one another is actually the thing I like most about the way it's written. And I find that a much more convincing romance than a lot of sort of picture-perfect Instagram moment films that you see. Mostly at first, in fact, they spar with each other defensively. They seem to be trying to prove points. She uses his presence to annoy her father and offers him dinner, then tries to blow him off. He makes sure that she knows he's well aware of what she's trying to do, and he's like, no, if all you've got is sandwiches, I'll have sandwiches. And then she's like, well, you know you're not going to get laid. And he's like, look, all I expect is a bit of company and some manners, frankly. He then makes it clear that he sees through her facade, and she reveals it will take more than a bit of cynicism and insight to impress her. And ultimately, it's when he connects with her memories of her family, her dead brother in particular, that you start to get a sense of the wounded, awkward person underneath all of Laura's smarts and hostility. And it's when he's truly honest with her and reveals in simple language what he's going through and how vulnerable and afraid he feels, werewolf symptoms and all, that they begin to actually connect as people. I find that all very reflective of my own experiences and very, very satisfying to watch, portrayed by two amazingly good actors. But just as it seems that they are going to spend an enjoyable evening together, the sunset triggers something in Will, and he is suddenly so debilitated that the best Laura can do is put him in a spare bed to rest. That night, under the glare of the moon, Will emerges from his bedroom window and hunts down a deer roaming free on the Aldens' premises. It's interesting to note that they clearly show the moon is not full. After all, Will's condition is never once referred to as werewolfism or lycanthropy or any such thing, but rather a possession by a demon wolf, who is supposedly always present but prowls by night. So much of the werewolf traditionalist lore simply doesn't apply here. No full moon, no silver, just a man slowly being swallowed by the spirit of an animal a little bit more every night. But very much like the classic lycanthrope of movie history, Will does indeed awaken covered in blood, with no memory of how he got there, and makes a speedy escape before anyone sees him. Returning to his publishing house renewed, Will successfully negotiates himself a pay rise, a promotion, and puts himself in a position to dispose of his slimy protege. You love to see it. We then have one of my favourite scenes in the movie, because it's probably one of the most difficult to pull off in this cinematic world that they've established. At some point in every tale of the supernatural, the cursed protagonist must seek out the elder mystic from the far culture, the wise elder, right, from some kind of exotic land, who hands down the mythology and the rules of the curse. It's a key narrative point in a great many genre stories, right back to the great originals. Now, that works fine when you're knee-deep in genre movie trappings already. It even works fine when you're the oh-so-modern and cynical Larry Talbot getting the lowdown from the old gypsy woman Maleva. But the entire point of this film is that it's supposed to take place in an entirely mundane world where everything is presented with this kind of detached realism. So, playing the part of the elder mystic character in this setting is a bit of a fine balancing act to pull off. We're going to need an actor with an astonishing amount of understated gravitas and skill to walk that tightrope. Fortunately, we have exactly that. Ompuri delivers so many beautiful lines in this scene, and is every bit the perfect combination of learned elder and feasible, believable modern doctor grounded in science. He even says, after laying down the law and handing over a supposed mystical amulet that keeps the demon wolf at bay, that even he only subscribes to the possibility. Here's this wonderful quote. After all,
we must remember that man has only been out of the jungle for 25,000 years.
Oh, fantastic. Chef's kiss. Finally, the doctor reveals that he's dying and asks Will to honour him with his bite, something Will is too embarrassed to do, and apologises before leaving. For some reason, this bothers me more than anything else in the film. I really would have loved a little scene towards the end where he just comes back to give the old man the pardon from death that he wants, and so clearly deserves, but I'll have to put that on my list of things that I want but will never get, alongside immense personal wealth, the undying love of Jenny Agutter, and the ability to wipe an American werewolf in Paris from existence. The pills! The pills! Will manages to reconnect with Laura after running out on her unexpectedly, but that very night, the demon wolf spirit has him prowling again. This time, he has a stroll around the zoo, pre-Friends David Schwimmer cameo, I'll be there for you, and escapes only to run straight into some muggers, one of whom ends up getting his fingers torn clean off. Again, there are lovely subtle touches of makeup here, a slight canine tooth extension, some contact lenses, a little bit of extra hair, but it's Nicholson that sells it. He's truly menacing, and he does it seemingly without effort. Waking up next morning as usual, with no clue of what happened, he heads back up to the publishing house to deliver the killing blow to the career of his traitorous former protege. There's another beautiful line where just as Stuart is starting to get his wind up to have a serious shouting match, Will simply turns and pisses on his shoes without a single word. And when he understandably asks, "What, are you crazy?" Will perfectly replies with,
No, I'm just marking my territory, and you got in the way.
What a fucking pimp. But he doesn't have long to enjoy his victory, as when he goes to wash his hands, he discovers some severed fingers in his pocket and is forced to face the fact that something is going seriously awry. Will's ex-wife confronts him in the lobby of the hotel, and Will warns her to keep away. Unbeknownst to either of them, Laura sees this entire interaction and is starting to see that something is wrong. Nevertheless, she still goes up to meet Will as arranged, only to find he's handcuffed himself to a radiator. I love how you can see Laura assessing him calmly here. Poor old Will doesn't even have the key for his handcuffs, he doesn't even remember where he got them, but Laura has some leftover skills from her misspent youth and she picks the lock, only to handcuff him again with his hands behind his back. And it does seem that the love of Laura in some way calms him, or at least gives the wolf something good to focus on. He does break out for a quick wolfy run around the local park, but all we see him do is have a bit of a howl and set off half the dogs in New York before waking up in bed with Laura again. The next morning the police show up and reveal that just the previous night, while Will was out on his moonlit run, his ex-wife Charlotte was brutally torn apart, and that obviously Will is a suspect. We briefly see that James Spader's character is back, vying for Will's job behind his back. Eagle-eyed viewers will notice Stuart's hand is bandaged from where Will bit him, a decision that is already haunting Will in ways he can't see, before Laura takes Will out to her father's estate to keep him safe, and they book a plane out of town together. From this point on, Laura has seen enough to be in serious doubt over whether or not Will is actually dangerous in ways that are beyond his control when the night falls, even if only because of something down to earth and diagnosable like a brain tumour or schizophrenia. One thing that I enjoy in particular is that even in a dangerous and complex situation, never once does Laura make one of those eye-rollingly horrible, stupid decisions that are so often foisted on female characters in genre fiction, purely to then provide an opportunity for some peril or some drama. While she clearly loves this man, she's also seen enough of her brother's condition to know that sometimes even good men can do harm to themselves or others when everything isn't firing like it should. So her internal struggle at this stage is pretty great, and in less capable hands you could easily become frustrated with the Laura character. But Pfeiffer imbues the character with complexity and strength, and turns this into an utterly believable character with full agency, whose decisions you respect and understand, and a great deal of that must go to the credit of the way it's written too. She locks Will in the barn with his own consent and goes back into the city to give the police a statement, where we get our last big plot twist. She's waiting in the lobby of the police station where she encounters Stuart Swinton, and anyone who's following what's going on as sharply as Laura is can see very clearly that when Will bit Stuart on the hand, he passed on a bit more than some tetanus. Stuart is sniffing her and scratching himself like a wolf and generally making it very clear that he is every bit as transformed as Will at this point. Laura realises that it was Stuart who killed Will's ex-wife in a bid to frame him out of his newly reclaimed job. The psychopath of this story just got fangs. Let's just take another quick moment to shower James Spader in his flowers. I have hardly ever seen this guy be anything other than watchable, and the way he invests this utterly unlikable scumbag of a character with acres of smarmy charm and believability is pretty impressive. As Laura flees the police station, Stuart gives a statement that falsely implicates his former mentor in the premeditated murder of his wife and stitches him up properly before leaving to chase Laura straight back to Will. There follows a reasonably well-executed final confrontation between a now fully Lon Chaney'd Will and Stuart, in which Laura ends up grabbing a dead security guard's gun and taking the killing shot herself. This is as strong as the makeup effects get, and yet again, Rick Baker manages to beautifully execute a unique interpretation of a lycanthrope on screen. But there's still enough room for the actors' expressions to come through and for them to emote. But the transformation is beautifully done. If there's one thing we here at the Werewolf Movie Channel have learned, it's never to underestimate the creative and technical genius of Mr. Rick Baker. In fact, I'm starting to think we should just call this the Rick Baker Movie Channel. At the end, Laura has inherited the wolf's power, and with it, a new strength, a new confidence, and a new level of self-mastery. She even plays the officers like a fiddle, sewing exactly the story she wants them to believe, before planting a tender kiss on her father's cheek, signalling that she is done reacting to him, and from now on, she will be manipulating him and his opinion as effortlessly as anyone else's. Through her link with Will, we see him finally shed his humanity completely for a life of running wild, and her yellow eyes are the last thing we see. I really enjoy this movie a lot, you guys. I find the nuances of performance and the many beautifully executed little moments hugely rewatchable. I can tell the director is more at home with the drama elements than the action stuff. And there were even famously some reshoots to make the end a bit more visceral and exciting. You can see them if you look hard enough. And if you're a fan of werewolf action in the underworld mould, I can see how spending an hour watching an elderly rich dude reclaim his footage in a publishing house could be a bit of an ask. But look, speaking purely for myself, none of those things prevent me from enjoying a great story beautifully told and acted by some of the best in the business that works equally well as a romance and as a werewolf movie. For my own personal reasons, I also enjoy the way it shows a rebirth of the spirit in later life, as I've experienced something similar myself in recent years. I like a story that tells me there's more to discover and still new life ahead. And I enjoy a reminder that even in this tame, domesticated world, there's still something wild within us all. This has been Greg Blackman. Stay safe out there, lock up the family silver, stay off the moors. I didn't mean to call you a meatloaf, Jack. Aru and
Well, you can run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Sooner or later, God'll cut you down. Sooner or later, God'll cut you down.